Look into that graph. Look at that graph and find out how religious are those countries that are producing millionaires. I mean, we have more churches in Africa than we have industries. On every corner, there is a church. Like in some parts in Nigeria, in one building, you find 15, 20 churches. Ground floor, second floor, third floor, right up to the top. And some are coming at 9, some are coming at 11, some are coming at 2, some at 10 in the evening. All of them are just praying and praying and praying. Hey, African people, stop praying too much. Start working. God does not say, I will bless your prayers. He said, I will bless the labor of your hands, and by your sweat you shall eat, not through your prayers. So we cannot substitute our hard work with prayerful lives. Prayer will leave you in poverty. Hear me well. Prayer will leave you in poverty. So we need to learn how to work. Look into that graph and find out these countries that are producing millionaires. What religion are these people believing in? Maybe we need to change the gods that Africa has accepted to deal with these ones here that seem to be economically viable and progressive in terms of helping their own members. Can't be spending your whole day at church. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, choir, Friday, youth day, Thursday, women's day. What it is practice, then it's practice, then it is all these old age things. The whole week you are in church. When are you going to sit down and start making money? So we need to find out from these countries again what is the recipe of their success. And having discussed that in terms of their labor, we also need to find out what kind of tax facilities that they have in terms of the tax havens. How are they treating their investments? How did they structure their financial systems? You can also find out in those countries that are producing the most millionaires. Find out for me, of all these countries, how many of them have foreign investors in their country. Find out how many of these countries on the top 15, top 20 that have millionaires, how many of them are working with foreign investments? How many of them are working with donor money? You may be shocked that they don't work with donor money. They don't work with foreign investments. And while you're asking that question, ask again these countries that have more millionaires. Who owns their banks? Who owns their banks? Who owns their insurance companies? These countries, who owns their insurance company? And while you're trying to answer that question, answer this one also. Who owns their land? Who owns their land? Because land is a means of accessing finances. So you walk up to the top 20 country companies and find out who owns their banks, who owns their insurance, and who owns their land, who owns their industry. And you, just when you thought you had it all, find out what kind of raw materials have they built their industries on. Are these locally produced? Find out again, are these locally produced goods? Are these locally produced raw materials? Where are they getting their raw materials from? And at what cost are those raw materials? And when you have answered that, find out again, are these countries democratic? That have the top 20 that are making the most millionaires. Are these countries democratic? When last did you hear of elections in Sweden? When last did you hear of elections in Switzerland? When last did you hear of elections in Hong Kong? When last did you hear of elections in Singapore? When last did you hear of elections in Denmark? While we as Africans are busy getting confused about these elections, 5 years, find out from these countries, are they democratic? And after answering the democracy question, find out if they conduct elections. And when last did they have elections, including Britain? When last did you hear of elections in Britain? And having answered that, you also want to find out not only about elections, but ask these countries again, how many political parties do they have? These countries that have the most millionaires, how many political parties do they have? How many political parties do they have? You will find that in Zimbabwe alone, when we're heading for elections here, 150 political parties, with every one of them wanting to be a president. So we want to find out what politics, what kind of politics are these countries playing with, so that maybe we can learn a lesson or two also of how to adjust our political system to produce these millionaires that we are hearing and we are reading about here. Are these countries democratic? Do they run elections? How many political parties do they have? And not only that, you also want to find out what culture do these people adhere to that are making the most millionaires. What kind of culture are they built upon? Are they supporting? What kind of ethics and moral ethics? What are their functions? What's their science? What is the science of their success in terms of their spirituality? And you also want to find out how they've been able to manipulate their economies to create these millionaires. And what must our students in Africa learn after studying what other countries are doing to create millionaires? So yes, there you have it. You have Switzerland on top of the list. You have Hong Kong, you have Kuwait, you have Australia, then you have USA, New Zealand, Netherlands, Denmark, Canada, Sweden, Belgium, Spain, France, UK, Ireland. And then at the bottom of the food chain, then you have Cambodia, you have Turkey, you have South Africa, Indonesia, Brazil, India, Russia, Mexico, as you're going further up the list. So maybe in terms of our curriculum, I conclude, we need to study this information from the cradle to our universities. Not only to study for the sake of historical study, we need to study the science of creating sustainable communities. And I bet you my bottom dollar all the questions that I'm asking you on the top side. How must we teach our children? How did they make their money? What systems and industries did they build to create such millionaires? What is their value chain, and how and who owns it? How does it function and who owns it? What raw materials are they being used to build these wealth bases? Who owns their banks? Who deposits in them? What tax laws have they used to secure such economy from foreign funds? Are they democratic? When last did they conduct their elections? How many political parties are in these countries? What is their curriculum? And what do they teach their children? What is their relationship to their culture as it also relates to their wealth creation? How can we also learn to manipulate our systems to create such? How much learning do we need to understand that you can never trust your economy in the hands of other people and think that it will be sustainable and you can produce self-sustainable people and create millionaires? It must be part of the curriculum in our universities, in our high schools, in our primary schools, in our cradle roll and crash, how to become a millionaire. We must not be afraid of teaching our children how to make money. And I think if we can go back and do a thorough research on these economies, we can be able to come up with a curriculum of study which our children can get into to be able to reach these same heights of excellence. There's no excuse, Africa. We have the schools, but we don't have the education. We have the teachers, but we don't have the knowledge. We have the raw materials, but we don't have the technology. We have the politics, but we don't have the economics. We have the people, but we don't have the brains. And what we don't have seems to outweigh what we have. Africa is not poor. It's the people who are poor. Continent is rich, but the people on the continent are poor. And they are poor not because of what is underneath their ground. They are poor because of what is between their ears and what is between the ears of their own leaders. Therefore, we go to study such information so that we can come to ourselves, call the Department of Education and say, transform this Bush Bantu education. Translate it into this which can develop children for the future. We need to go back to our economic books and burn them. MP3 squared, what stupid little formulas of the Western world, and come around and say, how do we write our own economic books that speaks to our resources and transform our society?